Welcome back to the We the Patriots podcast. I'm your host, Sal Assante, and today we are going to be talking fertility rates. Let's get right into it. So I just want to, off the bat, apologize for the impromptu setup here in my apartment. Did not really have time, given the snowstorm and all that crap this weekend, to get in the studio to record. So hopefully going to keep this one nice, short, and sweet, and be a little bit of a series that I want to do on specific topics and just give my thoughts on everything that's going on. First one being fertility rates. Why are they important? Why are they so low? What can we do about them? So there's a few different reasons for why fertility rates are so low. A lot of it, of course, has to do with economics. I know it's something that I've been touching on quite a bit recently, but with the economic situation as it is in the United States, it is quite grueling to have a child. You are forced to make a decision on whether both parents are going to work. You are in a tough position of having to give your kids to somebody who is not a family member in order to look out for them for more than 8 hours a day. If you want to both work, if not, you are missing out on income and possibly not able to keep food on the table. Economics is a huge, huge factor in terms of people wanting to have children. I've talked about the economic situation many times in this show, but there's a laundry list of things that are extremely expensive, whether you want to talk about housing, insurance costs, just what it costs to keep yourself fed nowadays, transportation. The list really is endless, but at the end of the day, things cost so much. And when you're having a child, you have to take another mouth to feed that mouth, get them clothing, have a roof over their head, right? All these different factors come together, and it's tough, economically speaking, to have a child. Another reason, of course, kind of leading in from economics, but is its own kind of issue, is the now cultural acceptance of getting married extremely late. Now, most marriages that you see nowadays are happening when the couple is on average, 30 or above. And when you're getting married at the age of 30, the fertility rate in general, forget about what the couple is actually doing, the ability to have a child is severely hampered. One of the uncomfortable truths about childbearing in terms of the woman is that they are in their best ability. They have their best ability to have a child somewhere around the age of like 16 to 18 years old. And from there, the rates of infantile death go up and up and up, and, miscarriage rates go up. Everything kind of gets more dangerous for both the woman and the baby. So that's also another factor, of course. Another factor, of course, is the overall health of Americans, whether you want to talk about obesity, the massive epidemic of type 2 diabetes, or really low sperm counts in general for American men. All of these different health factors are playing a role as well in creating this environment where it's very hard to actually get a woman pregnant and sustain the pregnancy. All of these factors combine to make an environment that is very hard for the average American to have a child. But by far, and I mean this sincerely, by far the biggest reason that pregnancies are so low and childbirth is so low and our fertility rate as a consequence is below replacement level, talk about that in a second, is abortion. Now, before I talk abortion, I want to talk about what is replacement level. For those of you that didn't take the easy AP class back in high school, replacement level is how many children are born to each woman in the United States on average. That rate, if you want to sustain population levels, has to be 2.1. If you want to grow population levels, it needs to go higher. We have been beneath a 2.1 rate for what looks like roughly, last time it popped over replacement was in 2006, 2007, according to the research I have in front of me. In general, we have not seen a sustained rate above 2.1 since 1971. Now, if you're looking at that year 1971, it does not directly correlate, but it heavily correlates with the institution of Roe versus Wade, and in other words, federal legalization of abortion in 1973. Now, why is abortion such a big factor? Well, I just want you to have an idea of what the numbers look like over the past 50 so years, roughly since 1975. There's an estimated between 65 and 67 million abortions that have occurred in that time. Why is that significant? Well, if that number doesn't kind of make you jump out of your seat already without me explaining it, if you were to add in all of those, now obviously this is a ridiculous scenario, but for my argument's sake, I'm going to say that all of those abortions turned into births. Our birth, or excuse me, not birth rate, our fertility rate would increase by something like zero point 0.8. Now, if you can imagine the US fertility rate hovering somewhere around 1.7, 1.8, where it has been for the past 15 some odd years, adding zero point 0.8 to that puts us not only at the ability to sustain our population, but actually to grow our population. And that is a massive, massive change. Now, even if you were to take half of those, you would see a rate increase of something like 0.4, which still would put us at least replacement rate. If you took something like a quarter of those, we would be damn near replacement rate, especially going off of fertility rate statistics of the past couple of years where we're hovering around 1.8. We'd be really right, almost right on the nose there. So why is it so important to retain a fertility rate at least levels that are going to sustain your population? Well, the reason that you need that is multifaceted, to tell you the truth. But one reason, of course, is that population decline is kind of like something that, like, if, for instance, Japan has been going through and a lot of Europe has been going through for quite some time. When you have cases like that, your age chart, essentially, of how many people of each age are going to fill out your population starts to get really top heavy. By top heavy, I mean older generations are making up the bulk of your population. And when that's the case, you put quite a strain on the economy, you put quite a strain on the healthcare system, and you actually start to choke out the country and the nation as a whole. And not only that, it becomes a self-perpetuating problem. The more and more you stray away from that 2.1 replacement rate, the harder it is to get back to it, because you have less and less childbearing ability because the people are older in general, right? So getting back to that 2.1 rate is much, much more difficult. Another issue is that when it comes to economics, being able to sustain your population actually allows you to have an up and coming workforce at all times, being able to train new people to come in, being basically allowing people to retire at the proper age. All of these different things get affected when you don't have a consistent flow of younger people coming into the workforce. And that doesn't really even matter whether you're talking about college educated or not. In general, if you do not have the right amount of people coming into the workforce, and in order to make up for the needs of the nation, you're going to have to supplement. We'll get to that in a little bit. And lastly, but I think probably most importantly, is the social aspect and kind of the cultural aspect that comes along with replacement rate. If you're able to maintain your replacement rate level of fertility, you're going to be able to keep the real core of what your culture, what your nation is all about. You know, here in the United States, you have the freedom of speech, freedom to bear arms, the freedom to protest. You have the freedom of no unlawful search and seizure. The list kind of goes on, but the point being is that you have many rights that are upheld, and the more that you are having children that are brought up in the system, and you teach them as parents, you teach them as the school system, these kids are growing up with the culture that you have provided. When you are not at that replacement rate, you run into a lot of issues in terms of especially those economics and the kind of social cultural issues. And that, I mean, you have to go out and get immigrants to come in. You're no longer relying on your own population to sustain your population and possibly even grow it if necessary in order, to fill jobs or be able to produce the things that your economy needs to produce. You now need to go and outsource that. Issues come in economically. Number one, you start to, in some cases, like we're seeing today, a massive debate flowing with people coming in, immigrants coming in and taking jobs. Now, this has always been an argument, but taking jobs from Americans who are born here. And in some cases, when you have mass illegal immigration, like we've seen over the past 15 to 20 years, you actually have an opportunity to undercut American workers. So not just are you prioritizing immigrants in your workforce, but it's actually a net benefit for the employer because if they're dealing with an undocumented immigrant, then they do not have to pay that person a fair wage. Think about the kind of having someone over a barrel, so to speak, type of way that an employer who may know that they have an undocumented person working for them, think about the situation that they're in right there. They have the ability to report that person to the authorities if they so choose. But also, not only that, what is that person going to do? If they're not paid properly, are they going to go to the authorities themselves? Well, there's a chance, maybe the past 4 years, not so much, but nowadays there's a chance that they just get kicked out of the country and they get found, right? So you have an opportunity as an employer to really exploit these people and in doing so, undercut true wages, what wages should be, and undercut the American people who can't find a job that's actually paying them enough to get a house, to do all of these things, right? And what you also are going to do by incentivizing all of this immigration is that a lot of times these people are coming in when they are of working age. Right? You're not going to be pulling in a whole bunch of 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. You're going to be pulling in people who are, most likely between the ages of 18 and 35. And when you're doing that, you're bringing in people who are fully developed. They have their way of thinking. They know what their values are. And not in all cases, of course, but in a lot of cases, they do not align with your country's values, whether you're talking about the Bill of Rights, whether you're talking about, a trust-filled society, all of these different factors. If you're continually bringing people in, and especially when you're talking about illegal immigration, there's really no bar that they need to meet in order to get into this country in terms of, understanding what this country is about, understanding our laws, understanding the entire process of what it is to be a citizen in the United States and a well-functioned citizen, not just someone living here. When there is no bar for them to reach and they just show up and start making money and they're able to make money, well, you start really eroding, again, not only the economics, but also the social fabric that is your nation. I'm talking here about the United States, but this is anywhere in the world. If you look at what's going on in Europe with the mass immigration coming in from the Middle East, there are problems that continually stem from people who are not actually assimilating properly into the nation that they're coming into. So just to kind of wrap up the point here, why is fertility rate so important? Well, number one, we have an easy point to make. And I'm not necessarily in the camp. I'll do a whole show about abortion, how I feel about it, but I'm not necessarily in the camp of making all abortion illegal. I don't think that it's feasible. I don't think that it would be socially acceptable. That being said, severely limiting it, especially maybe along the lines of what Europe does, which most cases Europe is extremely liberal compared to us, that's a pretty standard case, after 20 weeks or 18 weeks. I forget, it might vary across countries, probably does. But my point being, there is a hard stop at when abortions can't occur anymore. I think having some sort of reasonable policy like that here in the United States would significantly reduce our abortions. Pro-choice people are always making the argument that almost all abortions happen in the first 5 weeks. That's just not true. Now, you're not going to see a majority of abortions happen in the third trimester when the mom's about to pop. That's also true. But a large majority of abortions happen in that gray area. And I think if we had a law where, this is where it stops, then I think that kind of solves everything. Tightening up immigration and making sure that we are promoting childbearing here in the United States, whether that's through tax credits, whether that's through free schooling, free childcare, through free preschool, whatever it may be. I think that that is at least a step towards, even though I'm not really a fan of, again, just giving your children away to someone who is not related to you at such early ages. But at the end of the day, if that's what it takes in order for you to be able to survive here in this country and feed your children and yourself, then I think it's something that the country should be looking out to do. Make it more economically feasible. Make it so that you are prioritized in the system for having children. And then not only that, have a stringent law on when an abortion can occur. I think that fertility rates would at least get to a level of replacement, if not probably shoot above that. So Let me know what you think in the comments. That's all I got for today. Actually went longer than I wanted to, but this is a pretty important topic, and it's one that, some people can take too far, but I think is extremely important for us to have a conversation about and not be afraid to face criticism for whatever your view may be, whether you are on my side or you're on someone else's side, because at the end of the day, if we're not replacing ourselves, then someone else is going to replace us, maybe even another organism. So that's all I got for you today. Merry Christmas to you all. I will have one more episode coming out before Christmas, and then we will follow our little tradition of doing our top 5 shows of the year.
I wish I were the fucking state. I wanna be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.